Yo, what's good? It's Skano from the gutter. Of all these talking points that have emerged from, Africans, the one that really resonated with me, because like I said before, man, Africans are not any threat to us. We know what the real threat is. So, but one thing that resonated with me that I've been hearing is that we were given civil rights and we do not even know what to do with them. We were given civil rights. Do y'all know that black Americans fought against the British in the Revolutionary War? There were, you know, blacks on both sides of that fight, let's be clear. But as it applies to America, black folks was fighting for America's freedom before we even had our own freedom obtained. We always fought for freedom. So, what was given? I'm confused, you know, because I thought we had a common enemy, you know. Where is this coming from? Who sent y'all? But really, even after, you know, being denied our freedom, even though we were, like I said, involved in the Revolutionary War to free Americans, we still had to fight for ours. So the first, because there were many insurrections, many lost to history, many unrecorded. This is not the type of propaganda, if you want to call it that, that white Americans wanted spread. They didn't want to encourage any type of, you know what I'm saying? They didn't want the idea spreading. So a lot of this got erased, but Evil Landing, 1800. This was in Virginia, one of the first major slave revolts. And it was led by Gabriel Prosser. And eventually, you know, over the course of a few days, you know, they ran up against a flood. A flood occurred, which cut off geographically, you know what I'm saying, undermined strategically. They ended up being overrun by military and killed off at some point. But 1811, 500 Africans on the outskirts of the city of New Orleans in Louisiana, you know, mounted an insurrection. And they went throughout, like I said, the countryside of Louisiana, killing and burning any white farms, you know, they came across. And American troops, you know, overcame them about 10 miles outside of New Orleans. 1821, Denmark Vesey, a freed slave, you know, who made it his life's dedication, the remaining years of his life, you know, educating slaves and also drumming up, you know, insurrection. So for a couple years after being freed, that was his main, you know, occupation. And like I said, in 1811, 1821, I'm sorry, you know, and this was in Charleston, Carolina. And they were able to, like I said, these insurrections usually didn't you know, they were not long lasting. In other words, they got stamped out pretty quick. But the fact remains, in this one, in 1821, Demarvisi, he got backdoored. So somebody from inside, unfortunately, we have those, entities. Even now today, we have, the traitors, the backdoors. And ultimately, that's what undermined that insurrection. There was insurrections and slave revolts occurring even in the Midwest, in the East. People think this predominantly just occurred in the South and that, the Midwest and the Eastern regions of the country was, more liberal, or no, it wasn't. It wasn't. In 1712 in New York, 1721, there were multiple insurrections during the 1700s on the East Coast. 9 whites killed in this one in 1712. And all by 17 slaves, mind you. So these insurrections that occurred throughout the course of history, it was not like thousands upon thousands of slaves, that oftentimes less than 100, way below 100. And but they fought, man. Even though they knew they were fighting against insurmountable odds, and ultimately the outcome would be death. We've always had, what I'm saying, ancestors who, in spite of that, they chose death over slavery. So these narratives that we were given civil rights, and it's all a farce. So I have to ask y'all Africans, man, what's y'all real agenda? What are y'all really on? Who sent you? And of course, probably the most famous insurrection was, Nat Turner, 1831, just 75. 75 slaves were able to go through multiple towns in Jerusalem, Virginia. And make no mistakes, they took no prisoners. I'm pretty sure most of y'all are familiar with Nat Turner. So slavery was not just ended because white folks, out of the kindness of their heart, black folks was not going to just willingly submit to slavery. Even though we had the entire construct against us, we've always fought against it and died. We killed for it and died for it. So Nat Turner, there's different accounts of how. Now some people say he went months. It was at least weeks before that revolt was quelmed. But Nat Turner himself stayed, he stayed on the run for some months afterward. Now Hollywood turned it into a whole film, and they changed the ending, if that's what you want to call it. They had, for cinematic, theatrical reasons, he and his, the last few remaining, insurrectionists got cornered at this farm. And, after the ensuing shootout, gun battle, he had to surrender, but, in actuality, he hid out in the woods. He was out in the wilderness, And when they did find, I think it was just some random, poor white farmers. When black folks, you got a insurrectionist running around free, that was like bigger than the Super Bowl. White folks was out there day and night. Whether they owned slaves or they was the poorest of the whites, they was out there because, So, just by happenstance, they stumbled upon his camp, if that's what you want to call it, and on the verge of starvation, and And eventually he was taken in. He was hung. He was hung. But as I said, man, we've always fought. Our ancestors from, the moment there were many slaves that threw themselves overboard on the way here during the transatlantic, you know what I'm saying? There was also a early 1700s, I forgot what city, but it was common for, the Africans that came right over, they would commit suicide, you know, rather than be, now, like I said, that wasn't as common. But you had slaves that would just walk into, you know, a body of water, a lake, a fast flowing stream, whatever the case may be, and drown themselves by the hundreds, as opposed to being, So even taking your own life is a form of, you know what I'm saying? But many fought. We've always fought. We were never given anything, so no. Try again. So even before civil rights, you know what I'm saying, hundreds of years later, of course. And if it was not for, as I said, and I'm going to keep saying, if it were not for FBAs, which y'all claim we have no foundation, as I said before, we built the foundation that y'all are able to come over here and benefit from it. So these talking points about we were given this, we were given that, that is the true fallacy. That is the biggest lie ever put out there by American propaganda that, like I said, at some point in time, white America, the American government decided, you know what, maybe we should do what's right and just, constant fighting. And they knew that this country, the legs that this country stood on, will be cut right from under them if they were to keep trying to deny black folks what was rightfully ours. They knew this country could never proceed that way. And it never could. And it never will. So like I said, we have a lot of, it's been a lot of ramping up in incidents as far as racial violence. And I guess y'all don't need us anymore, So as I said, we've always played the role of the disposable razor. You know what I'm saying? We do the dirty work and then they want to discard us. But just like our ancestors, we're not going to allow that. We're going to keep fighting. So, and the fight never ended. So while y'all talking about the things we were given, we are still fighting. Because we never were, compensated. All the lives lost. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of hours of free manual labor never compensated for. Being maimed, mangled in the process, murdered. Children sold off to different parts of the country, never to be seen again. How do you calculate repayment for something like that? I don't know, but we can start with reparations. I'll say about a cool meal apiece. That's a good starting point. Don't act like y'all don't have it. Y'all been spending billions per year on illegals. And that's one of the biggest insults. It's just like, right in our face. We built this shit. We've been denied, like I said, our compensation. compensation our ancestors fought and died for, they'll never see it. Maybe we'll never see it, but God damn it, my grandkids should see it. Their grandkids. How do you quantify the cost? So we are still fighting. What are y'all doing? What are Africans doing to push the agenda? Nothing. You come over here and you want to antagonize FBAs. But what have you contributed while you talking about all the things that we were given? So, as I said, man, we got bigger issues than Africans, but since a lot of y'all seem to, Africans that is, you seem to be ignorant to American history. You talk, come over here talking about your customs and shit we don't care nothing about. We talking about the fight that's been going on here since day one. 1612 to be exact. The first day they shipped our ancestors over here that we know of. The fight has been ongoing since. Where have Africans been? Reaping the benefits. That's what y'all been doing. Sitting back, running your mouth. While we've been on the front lines for hundreds of years. And y'all have the audacity to talk about what we've been given. We were never given nothing but hell here. And we had to fight for that. So, no, y'all need to educate yourselves. Educate yourselves, not, American history, Black, because it's two different histories. Make no mistakes. Technically, there are two different histories here. The one they want y'all to believe and the one that actually occurred. And we had a hand in it. Trust me. Either scenario you want to roll with. But as I said, there will be no America today, as you know it, without FBAs, the resistance, the struggle, the fight, the revolution. So, like I said before, while y'all doing all the chirping, just remember, while y'all are running from Africa, you're running from your problems over here to a safe haven that we help orchestrate this shit. We ain't running nowhere. We have nowhere to run. Even if we wanted to. So, I thought Africans had better manners than this, as far as your customs. Because I thought it was customary when you're in someone else's home, remove your shoes at the door, take your hat off, and show some humility. Because regardless of what the rhetoric that's out here, we definitely helped build this house. The foundation that it stands on was built from the blood, sweat, and tears of FBAs. No ops left Scano, you already know.